Steel City Sports back here for yet another Wildcard weekend playoff matchup breakdown. Today we're talking Eagles versus Buccaneers. Tomorrow morning will be the final Wildcard round breakdown video of the Texans versus the Browns. So stay tuned for that tomorrow if you're interested in that matchup. And if you want to see any other of the breakdowns, there will be a link in the description for the playoff playlists. So you can check those out. But like I said, today we're talking Eagles versus Buccaneers. I think one of the most intriguing matchups of the first round. Just for the simple fact that Philadelphia is even here. The fact that they are the 5 seed, I think, is one of the most fascinating stories of the entire season. You know, the Philadelphia Eagles were 10-1, looked like they were right back on pace and going to march right back to the Super Bowl. However, things have really turned around. They've fallen off a cliff in multiple reasons, as we're going to get to in depth during this breakdown. We're going to highlight some of their key issues. And you know, they went 1-5 in their last 6 games to close out the season. It's pitiful, especially their last game of the regular season, losing to the New York Giants, who were playing Tyrod Taylor, and a pretty important game for the Eagles. It wasn't like a throwaway game. They were trying to win that game against the Giants, because if they win that game, they had a shot at still winning the division. And they gave out that just effortless performance. It was actually kind of embarrassing for the Eagles. And then for the Bucs, definitely an impressive season, just for the simple fact that Tom Brady, the best football player of all time, left your team the past offseason, yet you were able to still make the playoffs. Now, granted, it's the worst division in the NFL, but playoffs are playoffs. And the Buccaneers are back for yet another year. Baker Mayfield having arguably the greatest season of his NFL career. And I think they're a really, really talented team. You know, they still have a lot of those guys that were on their Super Bowl team from not that long ago. So let's get into the personnel breakdown. And we start off with the head coach matchup. And like I said earlier, the Philadelphia Eagles, there's a number of reasons why they've had this mid-season collapse. But I think the number one issue is simply their head coach is not good enough. I'm really kind of all out on Nick Sirianni at this point in time. And I think if he loses this game to Tampa, he will be fired by the Eagles the day after this playoff game. My biggest concern for this Eagles team heading into this year was losing both your coordinators, especially Shane Steichen, because before Shane Steichen was calling the plays, Nick Sirianni was calling plays, and their offense was not good. He turned over play calling duties to Shane Steichen, and they went to the frickin' Super Bowl. And now, early on, it looked like it didn't matter. Like, they were 10-1. It's like we didn't miss a beat. Jalen Hurts is still great, but now their offense is extremely predictable, and their defense has just completely fallen off a cliff. Todd Bowles. I really like Todd Bowles. You know, he was an instrumental part for Tampa winning that Super Bowl. His defense was incredible in that Super Bowl against the Chiefs. And although I think he would be obviously best suited to be a defensive coordinator, you know, I have kind of an offensive bias when it comes to my head coaches. Todd Bowles provides something. He is one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. He provides something as a head coach. What the hell does Nick Sirianni provide other than, you know, being annoying and, screaming? Nick Sirianni doesn't call the offensive plays. He doesn't call the defensive plays. What does he do? Todd Bowles actually provides you real value in that he is a defensive genius. So I think Todd Bowles, even though he's not widely regarded as one of the top head coaches in the league, I'm taking him over Sirianni because he does provide you value. And for the quarterback matchup, we have Jalen Hurts versus Baker Mayfield, 2 Oklahoma Sooner products. Baker Mayfield has obviously had an incredible season. I mean, what a turnaround for the guy. I mean, it looked like his career was headed down the path of just being like a journeyman, bouncing around from team to team, year to year. But I think he really has found a home in Tampa Bay. I think he has really proven that he does provide value to a team. I mean, you look at the stats on screen right there. I mean, they're really good. I think you can argue Baker Mayfield is now in that 15 to 10, top 10 to 15 range of quarterback in the NFL. He had a great season. And then Jalen Hurts, of course, is, I think, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I know he had a weird year in terms of his stats are definitely down from last year. Last year, he finished runner-up for MVP. But I still think on any given Sunday, he's one of the most dynamic and explosive players in the NFL, as especially a dual threat, has a great arm. And another factor in this matchup is both these guys are actually pretty banged up going into this game. Jalen Hurts has a finger injury, and Baker Mayfield has a ribs injury. And I ultimately think that Baker Mayfield's injury is going to cost him more than Jalen's, because you saw him play. If you watched the Panthers game, which they had to win to make playoffs, Baker Mayfield looked nowhere near 100%, and I don't think he's going to be 100% for this game. Not that Jalen Hurts, I think, is going to be at 100% either because he's injured, but I think Baker's is going to affect him more. So Jalen, I think he just is naturally more talented. I think he's a better athlete, and I don't think his injury is going to be affecting him quite as much as Baker's will be. So I give the Eagles the quarterback matchup advantage. And for the wide receiver and tight end matchup, we actually have a pretty good match here between two of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith versus Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think if you're just ranking out the best wide receiver duos in the league, both those duos would probably rank in the top 5, and the Eagles, I'd probably put them at number 2 right behind that Dolphins tandem of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. But a really big thing to factor in here is A.J. Brown is also questionable in this game as well. Now, I looked at some reports. It's looking like he's going to play, but we just talked about this with Baker. How much is this injury going to impact A.J. Brown? I don't know. I really don't. And I think this is really a close one. You could maybe talk me into the Buccaneers, but we've seen the connection of Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown when they're on. I mean, they are one of the best 1-2 punches in the league. On any given Sunday, they can be the best wide receiver quarterback tandem in the NFL. And then you have the Heisman, Devonta Smith, on the other side of the field to go along with that as well. And a more than capable tight end with Dallas Goedert, of course. So I think that this is a close one, but ultimately the Philly one I think is just too talented. I'm taking them in this matchup. And for the running back matchup, we have the Philadelphia Eagles duo of DeAndre Swift, a Pro Bowler this year, and Kenneth Gainwell versus the Bucs, Rachaad White and Chase Edmonds. So as much as I like Rachaad White, he's an extremely versatile back, had over 500 receiving yards, is a big piece of that offense. The Buccaneers ranked in the bottom 5 when it came to rushing offense. I might even want to say that they were bottom last in the NFL in just terms of rushing production. So that's not good. And the Eagles, such an integral piece of their team is just using their offensive line, letting guys run behind that, whether it's Jalen Hurts or whether it is DeAndre Swift or Kenneth Gainwell, whoever it is. The run game has been such a big piece of this rendition of the Eagles team. That's why in the offseason I was so surprised that they let Miles Sanders go, because he was a massive reason why they got to the Super Bowl last year. But they plugged in DeAndre Swift, and like I said, he was a Pro Bowler, really good and a strong piece for this team. So I think the Eagles get the running back advantage. And for offensive line, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers actually have a phenomenal line, but it just doesn't compare to the Eagles line. The Eagles have the best offensive line in the NFL, not only according to the eye test, but even from Pro Football Focus, they rank the Eagles as the best offensive line. In football, they have 2 future Hall of Famers on that line with Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson. They are just like a castle wall. I mean, they are incredible. And you look at why, the move, the brotherly shove, the tush push, whatever you want to call it. The reason why the Eagles are the team that were able to use that move so effectively and why other teams weren't really able to replicate it like Philly is for one simple reason, and that's because the Eagles have the best offensive line. The best teams, they look at what does our team do well? Well, the Eagles look at, we have the best O-line. Let's use it. And they use that with the tush push, which is essentially just their O-line falling down and pushing Jalen Hurts into the end zone, which 15 rushing touchdowns from Jalen Hurts, obviously a big part of that. So offensive line, I think, is a clear advantage for the Eagles as much as I like Tampa's line. Flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, starting with defensive line, the Philadelphia Eagles run a 4-3 with Brandon Graham, Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, and Josh Sweat on their defensive line, who put up 17 sacks as a unit. The Buccaneers run a 3-4 with Kalijah Cansey, Vita Vea, and Logan Hall on their D-line, putting up 10 sacks as a unit. So I do favor the Eagles in this matchup. I think not only do they have the better personnel, but also the defensive line is the heart and soul of the Eagles' defense. It has been, for years now. Even before the Jalen Hurts era, the defensive line, I think, was a major part of why they were able to beat the Patriots in that Super Bowl. So the D-line, and they even have depth as well. Like Jalen Carter is not even starting. Like, you throw him out there as well, which they're going to use him in this game. He's another big factor. Last time I looked at Jalen Carter's numbers, the rookie from Georgia, I mean, he had over 8 sacks, and we're talking about midway through the year. So I'm guessing He probably finished the year. I could be wrong on this. You guys will have to let me know. Jalen Carter, not even listed here, probably had 10 sacks on his own. So you also have to factor him in. I think this is a clear advantage for the Eagles. Now we take a look at the linebacker unit. For the Eagles, we have Zach Cunningham, Shaquille Leonard, Hassan Reddick. They put up 12 sacks as a unit and 129 solo tackles versus Tampa Bay's linebacker core of Yaya Diaby, Devin White, Levante David, and Shaquille Barrett putting up 19 sacks and 193 solo tackles as a unit. So I think the Eagles on paper, like, they have the more known names. Like Shaq Leonard was one of the premier linebackers in the NFL for a couple years there with the Colts. It looks like, just in terms of his production, has very quickly fallen off. That's why the Colts cut him. Hassan Reddick, of course, is one of the premier linebackers in the NFL, putting up 11 sacks by his own. And last year, of course, having an incredible year, a big key contributor to them getting to the Super Bowl. But just in terms of production, I'm going with the Buccaneers linebackers here. I think Levante David has a case to be a Hall of Famer. You look at his consistency over his career, how incredible he's been. Devin White and Shaq Barrett, of course, two other guys who were really important to that Bucs team that won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. So I am giving the Bucs the linebacker advantage. Now taking a look at the secondary, starting off for the Eagles, we have James Bradbury, Kevin Byard, Reed Blankenship, and Darius Slay, who combined for 6 interceptions, 41 pass defenses, and 246 solo tackles. Compare that against Tampa Bay's secondary of Jamel Dean, Ryan Neal, Antone Winfield Jr., Carlton Davis III. They combined for 5 interceptions, 25 pass defenses, and 214 solo tackles. So you're just looking at, on paper, looking at the names, looking at the stats, I think a lot of people would go with the Eagles secondary. They have more recognizable names, and their stats kind of jump off the page a little better. But I think cohesively as a unit, I think the Bucs play a lot better. I think Slay and Bradbury have definitely taken steps backwards from last year, especially James Bradbury, who I think is kind of fallen off a cliff. And also, just looking like as a whole, when you rank out the passing defense for the season, the Bucs rank 7th in that. They're the 7th best pass defense in the NFL, and the Eagles are the 15th best pass defense in the NFL. So I think this one, like I said, on paper, you look at it, you probably give it to the Eagles, but I just trust the Bucs secondary more. I think the Eagles' lack of production from their secondary has really played a massive role in their mid-season collapse. So I think the Bucs get the advantage here. With all that being said, my official prediction is the Philadelphia Eagles will win this game. This is definitely the least confident pick I have out of all the matchups we've talked about. The Eagles are the one that I could see being an upset. For me, this game really comes down to a coin toss, but I ultimately had to pick somebody. I went with the Eagles, and I think it subconsciously just comes down to one reason. That's I trust Jalen Hurts more than Baker Mayfield. Not that I'm a Baker hater. I've been a massive supporter of Baker throughout his entire career. It's just Jalen Hurts. I've seen him in these massive games. He outplayed Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and if the Eagles are going to turn things around, it's going to be on the back of Jalen Hurts and his dynamic ability. So that has been my prediction, my breakdown of this matchup. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you giving it a listen. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please like and subscribe.